want, like I had a pitch today through an acquaintance, somebody that I know and respect, and they said, oh, I want you to talk to this person. She's doing something really cool. And it was clear, like the thing she was doing was neat and coverable, but to me it was made cooler by the fact that she told me something about where her passion for that product had come from. That she had an experience that changed her life, and so she developed this product. And I think that always is my magazine. It's about life, it's about people. I like that. I don't necessarily need to know where you went to high school or that you like Girl Scout cookies or things like that. But I think that there are other times where it's really about the product. The product is just amazing. I'm thinking of like the iron or whatever. I think of the active iron. And maybe there's a full story about that. Somebody picked up poison and sort of happened. But if there is no story, still for me, then focus on the product and wow, it went through 100 years of development, or it came as a flash in the night to this person. You kind of have to use your judgment about that.
You don't want ad nauseum bio background. But right. If you're a woman in her 40s who, started a business, and this business is very interesting because you're also who you are, more magazine might be very interested in the fact that you're an entrepreneur. Right. And business is new, it's not. So you have to know, again, your audience, and know what is interesting about what you have to say. But get people.
So in email communication, when we'll send a very short personal email with an idea, and then for a bio, I'll put the bio at the end. And if you want, here's some details of that. So if they get that far, great, or they have it in their email or what have you. But giving the option, I think if you're on the phone or if you're in an in-person conversation, I think passion is great because you want somebody to be passionate or being the expert, like sharing your knowledge. I think being over the top, I mean, people that you come in contact with that are totally over the top. It's a turn off, no matter if you're in a conversation, no matter who it is. So, yeah. Okay, yeah.
Oh, can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
What do you do if you are in an interview or you have been interviewed and something's being published about you and you feel like the reporter might be intentionally or unintentionally misrepresenting you or your position?
Not a great relationship right there.
Yeah,
right?
It's tricky. So I would actually...
Sometimes, as hard as you try to explain yourself, sometimes they might already be coming at you with an angle, and they're just using quotes to benefit their angle, even though that's not what you're trying to say.
Oh, yeah. Well,
That's
they have to
happened
serve
me,
their
so-
story first. They're not out to be your PR person. They're out to tell their story. And
Right.
you don't get to control that message all the time, right, Katie?
You don't. So you have to make a decision. So one of the things that I think it's a first question. Like, do you have a particular angle? Like that becomes a first question before you start going off on your story and who you are. The first question might be like, what are you writing about? What's your angle? Who are the other people that you're talking to? And then you can decide, how brief. You might decide, this is sort of like an anti-fair trade, why it's not working. People taking advantage of third world countries, whatever. Maybe I don't want to be in that. Maybe that's one reporter's opinion, and they want to go off on that angle, and that's not a good place for me to be. So, you can tell. Mostly, a reporter should be honest with you about the angle. They might not say it so bluntly like that, but you can read between the lines, and then you can decide. But I do think that's why, like in that slide of who's driving this. If you're actually in a conversation, you're a participant now. Now you're in a conversation. You have the right to know. You have the right to know how much time it's going to take. You have the right to know who else they're talking to. You have the right to know when it's going to publish, because that might, if it's going to publish in January, there might be things that you can talk about that are launching in November that will be completely fine, versus if it's launching an elephant journal tomorrow, you might want to wait, So it's a different, or at least let them know, you can't talk about this.
But I would say if you feel that you are personally being mischaracterized, like they need a 30-something girl to talk about blah, and they're going to frame you in a way that just doesn't suit you.
When she's clearly 20-something.
Exactly. Yeah. Then, right. Then I think it makes really good sense to just say, just so you know, I'm not real comfortable being. That's really not who I am. I think it's good to give somebody a sense if you think they're on the verge of going down a rabbit hole that's not the one where you want to live, because it's your brand. It's your brand and it's your reputation. And once you get picked up once that person writes about you that way, it's much more likely that the next person who calls you, I saw you in this, and
they'll always reference it. And I had a client that hated to be referred to as a mogul, but yet one person did it. And so every other article that came up would always say, the mogul, and it got to the point.
I wouldn't say every article. No,
Many referenced it. And so it got to the point where the upfront was, just so you know, like, he's not a mogul. Like, that's not a way to describe it. Like, I need to know right now, before we get on the phone or if it goes any further. And, usually I can tell when they say, well, but the New York Times did say, and then you're like, okay, this isn't going to be a good idea. So just your instincts. I mean, if I think gut and instincts are pretty, you can sometimes be tricked, but I think that instincts are,
And I think a good journalist will appreciate being steered straight. I don't think a good journalist or a good publication is going to want to do that. So it might be a signal you're talking to somebody that maybe isn't the right publication for you or something. If you're talking to a gossip page, and what you really want to be is in a...
Watch out for the Daily Beast.
Yeah.
I actually I'm wondering, like, because I've been approached by journalists on, particularly the subject of human trafficking, which I think that some journalists in the U.S. are misled about. If someone comes to me with a story and I say, I think that your position is not right, would that be wrong to say to them?
No, I probably wouldn't
Not
go.
phrase it that
I wouldn't say not right.
I don't agree with your position.
Or I would just say, let me offer you a different point of view. Or I think that's a really commonly held misperception, but this is something that you might be unaware of.
Educate.
So would
Yeah.
you, as a journalist, be taken aback by that, or?
I would be taken aback if it was my beat already and you told me you're wrong about that, because if it's my beat, I think I know something about it.
Sure.
I would be welcome, though. I
I
would
want
welcome-
another perspective.
Yeah, I would want another
Yeah.
perspective, and I certainly don't want to keep getting it wrong if I'm wrong. So if someone who's smart about it says, here's what it is, and can provide some support for that position, now I'm interested.
Yeah,
I
and
think that's
actually it's a good point, the support piece. It's appropriate to say, well, let me, I have an entirely different perspective, which I've said to people before. I have an entirely different perspective. Let me share it with you. And then I'll follow up with, here's a handful of articles that you might want to read that actually share this point of view. So it's not like, your own editorial perspective point of view, but, there's actually a community that has a different perspective, and you could possibly have just a different perception.
Just to add on to that, get away, not from you or this perspective, but the other thing happens sometimes, like our magazine, we have a very strong point of view about nutrition stuff. So if we're pitched a low-fat product, and we don't really do low-fat, that's not part of our zeitgeist, it's not part of our sort of philosophy of nutrition. If you're pitching me a low-fat product and I tell you I'm not interested in a low-fat product and you tell me I'm wrong because low-fat is good for me and blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's like I really don't have time for that. Good luck. So you have to feel out, the context.
You're not going to turn around a publication. You can only offer your enlightened bit. You can't turn the Titanic, whatever we're saying.
But you might open up a new angle. I mean, the opposite is true. I've been interviewed by people who are writing articles about weight loss, and they're like, so what are your favorite low-fat snacks? And I'm like, well, to be honest with you, I don't really think that that's a big component of health or weight loss, so what I prefer to do is this. And they're like, really? I've never heard that. I'm like, well, let me send you some articles and research that might help you include a different point of view. And most of the time they like that, not always. Sometimes they're like, no, we only do low-fat. So,
Right.
Thank you.
yeah.
So how are we doing this?
Okay, so now we're going to break off, into groups, and each one of our panelists is going to play as a coach, and there's going to be one, if not two people from each group that are going to then, when we get done with a 10-minute kind of group circle, that we're going to pitch, and